আমাৰ ইয়াত ইমান ঠাণ্ডা পৰি গৈছে হঠাতে
আহিছে না ঠাণ্ডা নৱেম্বৰ আহিছে
ঠাণ্ডা
স্যার লাইভ হয়ে গেল লাইভ
start আপনি কবর যেটা করেন
yes you may start right now
we can start now, right?
yes
Yeah, okay.
go ahead
Good evening, dear participants. I Umid Isneem, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Dhing College, Assam, India, would like to welcome you all to the international webinar on the relevance of history in today's world, teaching research and career opportunities, organized by the Research Forum of Dhing College. I'll be the moderator of today's session, which will be graced by Dr. Lopita Nath from the University of the Incarnate Word, Texas, the United States of America. At the very outset, I request Dr. Biman Hajarika, sir, the principal of Dhing College, to inaugurate the session formally, sir. Over to you.
thank you Umi Tasnim esteemed professor Department of English of my college and the host of this webinar, international webinar being organized by Research Forum Dhing College in association with IQAC Dhing College. Today's topic that is taken up for today's webinar is the relevance of history in today's world, teaching, research, and career opportunities. For this webinar, international webinar, we have invited Professor Lopita Nath from the University of Incarnate Word, Texas, United States of America. And it's my honor to introduce and welcome here in this forum of Dhing College webinar, Professor Lopita Nath. Actually, she was my teacher at Cotton College, which is affiliated to Guwahati University in 19th. And today, she is going to shed new light on these three aspects of history that is already mentioned, and which is research opportunities and teaching and learning. And under national education policy introduced very recently in India, and what aspects, what are the opportunities offered by our national education policy for our history students. And here I would like to mention one thing before starting the session. Is a learning history always helps our pupils to develop their good social and moral values, and which are so vital in a society like India and anywhere else. Understanding contributions of historical personalities and significant historical events will always help to inculcate values such as loyalty, perseverance, property, and people's welfare. There is a saying in history is society's collection of memory. A country without a memory is a country of madmen. It is also said. So history provides us the opportunities, always provides us the opportunities to study the forces that are responsible for the rise and decline of power and dynasties all over the world. So history can be divided basically into three major specializations that we know, that archaeology, museology, and archival studies. After having a degree in history by any students, one can specialize in these basic fields. In India, for instance, ASI, Archaeological Survey of India, employs archaeologists and is entrusted with the maintenance of 3,600 monuments all over India. That's the same way the museologists are also who deal with design, organizations, and management of museums. These are the opportunities history offers us as a student, and we are now taking up history lessons. We are now imparting history lessons among our students and build up their career like in this way. There is a tremendous demand for history experts even in movie theaters also, or in movie houses who could undertake research work for costumes, jewelry, movie sets, etc. etc. Apart from that, archivists. Archivists are experts in preservation, in repairing parchment and paper manuscript preservation and microfilming documents, etc. etc. So these are some of the career opportunities that history lessons, history teachers gives us and to develop our instinct. And so far as the University of Incarnate Word that I see, that career in Asian studies also very important. And our Professor Lopita Nath now coordinate in this chapter, Asian studies, that academic researchers are there, bilingual, bilingual editor, cultural artifact specialist, custom inspector, heritage assistant. These are not found in Indian universities, in traditional universities, I should say, but these are very much visible in the curriculum of overseas universities like Oxford and Incarnate Word, etc., etc. And today's webinar, I believe, will be a pathfinders for our new learners and those who have taken up history as their major courses, as their subjects, and research subjects as well. And Professor Nath will definitely shed new lights on these aspects of history and what it's the what at present day history is means for. So in national education policy also, she will definitely throw much light on that, that what our national education policy is going to take up new things in near future. So without spending much time, I would like to offer this August forum to our esteemed resource person Lopita Nath. And before doing that, I extend my heartfelt thanks to all my colleagues associated with Dhing College Research Forum, Internal Quality Assurance Cell, and I extend my special thanks to our co-host Ummi Tasmin for taking so much of pain in organizing this webinar and sharing these links to various departments, various scholars, and stakeholders. With this word, I would like to offer this August forum of webinar in college to our esteemed resource person, Professor Lopita Nath. It's over to Umi to carry on the further proceedings.
Sir,
Umi.
before we start the session, Dr. Nath, I would like to read out a short bio for our participants. Dr. Lopita Nath is the chair of the History Department and coordinator of the Asian Studies program at the University of the Incarnate Word. She has taught for over 31 years in the fields of Asian and world history, migration studies, refugee issues, and human rights. Dr. Nath is a Fulbright scholar and the recipient of the Social Science Grant Research Council Award at UIW. She was awarded the Edward A. Zlotowski Faculty Award for Service Learning, the Minnie Piper Award, the Presidential Teaching Award, and the Moody Professor Award. Her research expertise is on migration in Asia, human displacement, refugees, citizenship, and human rights. Her current research focuses on the Bhutanese refugee resettlement in the USA. Since 2010, she visited the Bhutanese refugee camps in Nepal 3 times to understand the Bhutanese refugee crisis and also worked with the resettled refugees in Columbus, Ohio, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio, Texas. Currently, she is working on her book on the Bhutanese refugee resettlement in the United States. She has authored several articles in reputed journals on her research on the Bhutanese refugees. She is the past president of the Southwest Conference on Asian Studies, coordinator of the European, Middle Eastern, and Asian Studies at the Southwest Historical Association, and serves on the Catholic Charities Refugee Advisory Board and Faculty Advisory Board of Institute of Texan Cultures, and is the vice chair of the advisory board of the Etling Center for Civic Leadership. She is the co-director of the CELO Unity in Action, a refugee mentoring program in San Antonio that helps refugees transition to life in America through women empowerment, ESL programs, tutoring, and other help the refugees need. In collaboration with several community partners, Dr. Nath was also part of the cohort of the UIW NEH Trauma Grant in 2017 to 2019. Okay, ma'am, I think you can start with your session now. Over to you. Ma'am, you have to unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Professor Biman Hazarika and Umit Ashnin for this opportunity and also, the invitation to be here today. And please with me as I go through the different screens, trying to, perform the presentation. I would also like to thank, the whole Dhing College organization here, the Research Forum, for organizing this. And I know that, I have, Biman was telling me that there were a lot of former students. So hello to everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here to present to all of you today. So I'm going to share my screen. So today, as we go through this presentation, and as Biman and Umi mentioned, the topic was carefully chosen by Biman to make sure that it also kind of resounds with what is happening in India with the National Education Policy of 2020, and also to enlighten y'all on some of the features of how our American education system runs, how my teaching repertoire and methodology has changed, what I have done with my research, and what kind of research in history has become, very friendly to the student population, and also what are career opportunities in history. So one of the main important issues as we go through the study of history is to, kind of demystify the whole idea that studying history is not relevant and it's not useful to us. And as I have gone through this whole, COVID-19 and the pandemic, I had to go through several webinars, and I kept repeating myself that there are certain skills that we teach our students, which is whatever way and however automated our system will be, we also know that those skills are the ones that will be always very, very useful. So as I go through this, I would just like to start with a little introduction of where I am and what I'm doing right now. So just to give you an idea of where I am located, I'm in San Antonio, Texas. It's 9:13 a.m. in the morning. And I was telling Biman that I woke up for him early in the morning on a Friday morning. So San Antonio doesn't have a very large population as we compare to cities in India. It only has a population of about 1.5, the largest populated city in Texas is Houston with about 2.3 million population. So that's not a lot of people compared to where we are. But San Antonio is a really beautiful city, and those who have watched some of my earlier webinars, you have seen these slides that I have used. And the one very interesting fact about San Antonio is that it borders Mexico. And in historically speaking, San Antonio was a part of Mexico, which they became independent in the 1840s. And since then, San Antonio was a part of the US federal government. And historic sites that you see here is what is the Alamo. Anybody who comes to San Antonio visits the Alamo because it is the symbolic representation of what we call the Texas independence movement, fighting and taking San Antonio from the Mexican control. So it is a very historic, very romanticized version of San Antonio and Texan independence. There are other sites like you have the River Walk where this is a very beautiful tourist site. So in addition to being a historic city, San Antonio is also a very touristy city and it's very tourist friendly. So we have a large tourist population, especially during the summer. And then we also have other landmarks like what you see on the picture on top, which is the Tower of Americas. So from there, I would like to move on to talk about my university, the University of the Incarnate Word, where I have been now teaching for about 16 years. It's been a long time. You never know how time goes by. So this university is a private Catholic university, and I'll explain that as we go forward. The private Catholic university, it's the largest private university in Texas with a population of over 7,000 on ground. We have different schools. It's a liberal arts school, but it is also very multidisciplinary. We have, in addition to liberal arts, we also have a school of math, science, and engineering. We have a business school. We have a school of education, but we also have professional studies, especially the health professions with nursing, pharmacy, medical, and what do you call physical therapy, vision science, and pharmacy. So you name it, they have it. And so all of these institutions, including very strong STEM programs, including a very strong athletics. And I would like to just turn to show you a couple of videos that I promised Biman that I will show. So just to give you an idea of what the university looks like. So we will turn to this.
Located about 10 minutes north of downtown San Antonio, the University of the Incarnate Word's 154-acre picturesque main campus is home to 4,500 undergraduate students. Located in the 7th largest city, UIW offers world-class education, opportunities, and facilities in a smaller, more personalized learning environment. With a student-to-faculty ratio of 14:1 and an average class size of 25, UIW students work closely with the professors to become equipped for the job market. UIW offers more than 90 undergraduate programs in many different fields. Whether you plan to enter the workforce or continue your education with a graduate or professional degree, a degree from UIW lays the groundwork for success. With students from more than 70 countries, the UIW community is an ethnically diverse representation of Texas, the United States, and the world. UIW's multiple campuses and more than 140 sister schools allow its students to study abroad in more than 40 countries. UIW competes in NCAA Division I Southland Conference. The Cardinals field 23 teams and 14 different men's and women's sports.
I want to share another video with you. Just as you noticed, it's all about, the universities are all about branding here in the US. So there's a lot of what we called, how your university is, the mascot of the university, the symbol of the university, that is very, very pervasive everywhere. And what we see here is our main mascot is what they call the red or the cardinal. So those are important issues that we see in the university. So as we move forward, I would just like to, point out what kind of a university this is and what is the higher education in the US and how does it look like. So as we look at the different universities, and a question is always asked, like, what are the type of universities that are, very, very popular very popular here. And we have what we call the public universities and the private universities. And the only difference between these two kinds of universities is that how they are funded. So the public universities are funded by state governments, and you see the list here, universities of Michigan, Virginia, University of California at Los Angeles, which is UCLA, UC Berkeley, the West Point, which is the US Military Academy. So all these universities which are tied with the state are the state-funded universities, whereas there are other universities which are private universities, of which my university is one of those, and they are the ones that are funded by private donors and individuals who are not a part of the government. So private universities who have a large endowment, like people have donated millions and millions of dollars to these universities, and that's how the universities run. So we have Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton. These are all what we call Ivy League schools. And these private universities are very expensive. So a lot of people prefer to go to the state universities. The state universities have a large student population, about 60,000 in many universities, and the class sizes are large, like about 400 to 350 students per class. Most of these classes are taught by TAs. Professors are very rarely, in the class. So every class will have about 2 or 3 teaching assistants who are graduate students who are either doing their masters or PhDs at these universities. And what they say is that these universities have a lot of social life. They have the honor societies, they have the Greek life, which is the fraternities and the sororities. They also have a lot of focus on athletics and sports. So the football teams and the basketball teams of these universities are competing university-wide. So college football or college basketball is very, very popular in the US. And the universities are, they recruit students for these universities with large scholarships. The private universities are more focused academically because of the smaller class sizes, and also because it's very expensive. Students really try hard to get into these private universities, and as you see, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, those are like prized schools that students want to go to. And it's true, like if you graduate from these private universities, your life is made in a way. So, whatever discipline you are learning, or you're educating or graduating from, you are getting the best jobs. And according to statistics, about students from the private universities are paid, much more higher, and the public universities are earning at least 80% of what the students from private universities are earning. And just to give you an example of how expensive these schools are, like our school is a private university, and it's a small size university. Our maximum student population, both on ground and online, is about 10,000. And from these 10,000 students, our annual fee is about $40,000. So, I don't know how the students, American students, can afford it because they get a lot of financial aid and a lot of grants, but it becomes really expensive for foreign students to, attain these universities. There are a few scholarships available, and the one good thing about our university is that they don't make a difference between local and foreign students. So every student who comes is eligible for a scholarship. Whereas some public universities, they have a state tuition and they have an out-of-state tuition. So if you are out of state, you have to pay a much higher fee. And the same goes for international students. So I'm not trying to discourage anyone here, but it's just, those are the facts. There's also another difference between a research university versus a teaching university, and I know the national education policy is stressing on these elements of international education. So research universities focus more on research. The faculty are expected to do more research and very high standard research and publish a lot. So the whole idea is publish or perish. That is what they say. It's very hard to get promotion. It's very hard to get tenure. I think you need at least 2 or 3 books before you are eligible for tenure and promotion. But again, at the same time, the teaching universities focus a lot on teaching. Our university is a teaching university, and we have a lot of emphasis on teaching and of engagement with the student population, including what we are designated advisors. So our job is also to see the students graduate in the 4-year or 5-year time period to make their path smoother for their graduation process. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And so, but at the same time, the teaching universities are also emphasizing what we call research. So it's not like I'm teaching and I don't have to do research, because for promotion and tenure And every step of the way, every year, we have to show a certain amount of research that we are doing, but we are also heavy into teaching. There's this other brand which is called community colleges. A lot of students, get to a community college because they cannot afford a university education. So community colleges are cheaper, but they also provide the 2-year basic education, and then you can transfer to a university. And then there are also online universities. So as we move forward, we also have what is the credit system. And I know that the national education policy is stressing on the credit system now that there will be this change in the way you are assessing and in the way the students are going to get their points. So every university in the United States, and as you see this, we have four-year graduation path. Students here come to these universities right after they finish high school. And as we know that the US education system is, you have elementary school till about 5th grade, you have middle school from 6th to 8th grade, and then you have high school from the 9th to the 12th grade. So when you are finishing at the 12th grade, you are finishing off with high school and you are ready to go to college. So you take that entrance exam, which is called the SAT, or it's like there are 2-3 kinds. They have an SAT and they have an ACT, which are these aptitude tests that the students have to do to get into college. And of course, their GPA, which is the points and the marks that they have accrued in the first and the second year. So it's pretty much by the junior year, that is as much as it counts, because after the junior year, your GPA doesn't count as much, except for scholarships. So the university, so they have 4 years. Each year you have the freshmen, sophomore, junior, and seniors. So the freshmen are the ones that come right out of high school. So each of these years are based on the number of credit hours you have accrued. So when we talk about credit hours, every university has a variation here. And what we see here is that the students have to get minimum of 120 to 130 hours to graduate. So, and it depends on your major. It depends on how much you want to study. So you can be a double major, you can be a major and a minor. You can be just a major depending on how heavy your major is. But most majors also require the students to do a minor. So in this, as I see that our university has 43 hours of what we call a core curriculum, and then you have a major 39 hours, and then a minor between 12 to 21 hours. So it varies by program. And I'm going to just go back and show you a little bit about how this core curriculum system works. So as we look at what the core curriculum is, if you see, and I was reading the National Education Policy recently, and I noticed that it requires what we call a holistic education. It requires that students should be well developed in the basic ideas, what that is required to be a functioning member of the society, to learn their civic duties, to learn, how to be good citizens. And that is what a lot of universities in the US stress on. Their whole focus is to be to create these all-rounded, global, enlightened citizens. So you cannot be all-rounded if you do not study at least 1 or 2 courses of science, or you don't understand, anything about humanities, or you don't have an idea about social sciences or math for that matter. And I can say that, like our education system, and I'm a product of Cotton College myself, and I feel like our education system was very one-sided. Like I didn't study math in college. And so I'm very weak in math, or I do not have a basic idea about math. So we were given just one aspect because I was on the arts stream, and those who study sciences are totally cut off from the humanities and social sciences. But this doesn't happen here. So as we go through this, you see that the students have to do heavy English, which is composition and rhetoric, literature. They have to take a fine arts course. They have to take 7 hours of science and mathematics. They have to take history and behavioral science, which is any of the social sciences. And the students have choices. They have to take philosophy and a religion course. They have to take foreign language. They have to take 6 hours of any foreign language, that including the American Sign Language. And they also have to take 3 hours of what we call dimensions of wellness and a PE course. And every student that graduates from our university has to have 45 hours of community service. So this is what we call the core curriculum. And if you notice that it counts for 43 hours of your 120 hours of your credit. Each class, all of these classes are, when we say 6 hours, each of these classes are 3 credit hours. And when we talk about credit hours, we mean that they are required to be in contact with the professor for at least a minimum of 3 hours per week. So in this, we have our class duration is for 1 hour, 15 minutes. So in a day, they have to have 3 hours, which is balanced by 1 hour contact time and the rest 2 hours for preparation and study. So the students have to be very balanced how many hours they can actually take in a semester. And the whole process is that they can take only about, the easy balance is about 15 hours per semester. So they cannot take more than 15 hours. So they cannot take more than 5 courses per semester. And the students get an opportunity to choose. So this is our history credit system. As we see for a Bachelor of Arts in History, this is at our website, you can look at it. The students have to take world history, US history. They have to take 2 kind of method courses, which is the foundations of historical research and then making history. So these courses are all spread out throughout the 4 years. They have to take 3 courses or 9 hours of upper level US and 9 hours of upper level world. And then they have to take 1 additional course here, and sometimes they can do a history internship instead of taking this 3 hours elective. And for a minor, we have 21 hours of a minor. So, and students can be from any discipline. They can be a minor in history, depending on any discipline that they are taking. So as we move forward, and you can ask me questions later on, and we see that is, how a lot of universities in the US run. So we find that the credit system, which was really mind-boggling when I came here, and I got to understand it over the years, but it's not very hard, but it's also depends on how the students are advised. We generally want the students to take a minimum of 15 credit hours every semester to be able to graduate in 4 years. But some students kind of drag it on and they graduate in 5 years, some are graduating in 6, 7 years. And another very interesting fact, which I saw at your NEP, was that the students can transfer credit. So if they have taken courses at some other university, when they move to our university, there is a equivalency done. And if that credit, suppose they've taken a US history. So when they come to my university, they do not have to take that US history at our university. So we give them the credit for those courses that they have taken. So transferring credit is very common at US universities, and private universities will help them and find a way to make sure that the credit that they have taken is transferred. Because also remember that credits are also money. US university education is so expensive that it kind of talks like everything is related, transferred into money. So as we move forward, I would just also like to say that how has teaching changed for me, or how has teaching changed here today? So what we see here is the relevance of history today more important than yesterday. We see that it is, and Biman talked about all that, so I won't go into details. But one of the issues is, why do I teach history? Because I want to make sure that the students are understanding the world, they're understanding the diverse forces, they're appreciating what is going on in their lives. So all of this is within to understand themselves and to understand their broad place in history, that we teach them history, and also to teach them these different skills that it's very important for them. So as we look at higher education today, I just wanted to point it out how things have changed. And I'm sure, all the professors and teachers in the audience, you are aware of these changes. We are dealing with a very different generation of students. We are dealing with a very a student population that is hooked to some electronic device all the time. They're very hyper in attention deficit. They need stimulation all the time. And as we see that the world is definitely a smaller place, but the students are also very, very isolated. Now, as we move to the post-COVID situation, we also know that things are changing. We are very focused on this method, which is the remote learning, learning from home, learning, education, which is distanced. And we have new expectations. Both parents and students have new expectations of the faculty. The faculty are coming under tremendous pressure. And also the notion of career has changed. So that is something we also have to keep in mind, that students will not be, focused on one single career path. Like we tell anyone that, at US universities, students change their major at least 3 or 4 times before they graduate. So this is surprising that we are not stuck to the one major which we dreamed about, but they change. And as a result of that, when you're sending students out into the world, we also know that broad skills become very, very important. So these are some of the points that I, kind of summarized as I was going through this. Like, what are the competencies, or what do students need to survive in the 21st century? So we talk about core competencies like collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, communication, digital literacy, civic responsibility, all of those things which were very clearly spelled out in the national education policy. So all of this have become, and I feel like in some ways the national education policy was very well written to make sure that they are internationalizing the Indian education system. They're trying to open Indian education system and competition with the global world. And I think that is very, very important because India has so much to offer. The other factor that I always emphasize, which we in history are doing, and that is these transferable skills. And I tell the students, and I've been telling people since I started doing these COVID-19 webinars. And one of the things that people are failing to understand is that even though everything will become automated, everything becomes online and remote, we are still going to need these transferable broad skills. We are going to need how to read and write. We are going to need how to think critically, analyze, research, do presentation and communications properly, decision making, and to think outside the box. These things are never going to be automated. And even though they are automated, remember that these skills, the computer will not think for you. You know, we think that they will do it. Like I was at a presentation and I heard this gentleman talking repeatedly, like, oh, don't read, you know, don't read anything. Just go to Google and find something. What are the students going to read in Google? You know, we know Google is this massive database that gives us everything, but students will have to have that smartness, take out material that they feel are necessary for them. So all of these are transferable skills, which I feel if you're a professor, you're a teacher, I think we should emphasize on this, that this is what we are teaching you in history. We're teaching you how to read and write. We're teaching you how to think, analyze, do research. And all of these skills you will not get if you are, you know, not focused, or if you're not in the humanities or liberal arts. And there's one thing that I also wanted to emphasize is that in the liberal arts, education is very useful in many ways, because right now, even in the US, any student, even all the STEM students that are going for higher education, for professional courses in medical or other, health professions, they need humanities courses. So my son, who's gone into the medical field, he took a bunch of philosophy and anthropology and social anthropology and psychology courses because he needed those courses to get into the medical field. So the MCAT exam, which is the medical college aptitude test, has a whole section on social sciences and humanities. And if students cannot show, because they believe that the social sciences and humanities help in building this well-rounded individual. And so I think that is really something to keep in mind. So as I wanted to talk about, you know, look at these pictures and it shows you what students are like today. You know, they get bored very easily. So when I started teaching, especially when I started teaching in the US, you know, I should say that my students in Cotton College were one of the best. And it's a shout out to all my former students from Cotton College. You know, they were so tolerant and so cooperative and so wonderful. And but as I move forward, we see that now the students cannot sit still hearing a lecture until and unless you're wowing them, or you know, they are getting bored with PowerPoints and they are also getting bored with videos. If I talk to them and say, what do you like? And they are like, you know, you show a video and within 3 minutes, the students are looking other places because they cannot stand still. They cannot, you know, focus on what is up on the screen. So we had to change the way we teach. I had to change the way I teach. And I realized that teaching should be more interactive, you know, so we started pumping the class with debates, discussions, all the time, read and come and we will have a discussion. Change the reading material to make it more, connected to life. So we are not using like these dull textbooks. Students, when they open a textbook, they feel like it's the most dull thing on this planet. You know, so we are switching to nonfiction, we are switching to novels, we're switching to stories that the students can relate to. And then we are also doing other things which engages the students, like simulations and service learning courses, so that the students are going outside the classroom and doing things. So just to focus on a few things, like how do you design your course? So whatever the university tells you, and I know that there are a lot of limitations in Indian universities, where the university gives you a syllabus and the university gives you the readings, and that's how you need to teach. So we have an advantage where we have a lot of freedom in designing our courses. Although sometimes we have set curriculum, but the outline of the course is mine. And I'm responsible for the grading. I'm responsible for the for the assignments, and I'm responsible for the readings and for the assessment. So it's my course. So how I teach it is my responsibility. So I have to design the learning outcomes of each course, and the learning outcomes should be very, what we call student-centered, observable and actionable, and also very specific and developmental. So the student should get everything that you want them to out of this course. And also very important is that aligning the learning tasks with your objectives. What are they learning? What are the assessment? How are you assessing them with how they will, what they will get outside of this? And right now, as we see that the focus is also of what will the students remember after they graduate from your class 3 months later. They're taking so many courses that that becomes another factor. That will they even remember what you taught them in World History 1 or US History 1 or in an upper level course. And also, now another focus is to emphasize caring and human dimension. So are the courses humane enough? Are the courses focusing on building that idea of empathy and compassion among the students? And I know that we think that it's going to do, but we are going to be very, very deliberate about it now. So the other factor that as we design our courses, and I really like to talk about this, which is the Bloom's taxonomy. And if you look at the Bloom's taxonomy, you will see how it's a pyramidal structure as they take you through the different levels of how a student is going to learn. So from the very beginning of what we see here, the first two is the students have to remember the information. The students have to understand the concepts. And all of these are things that the student have to do on their own. You can explain it to them, but if they do not read, they will not understand and they will not remember. The next two stages are how the students are taught to apply and analyze the information. So if you're teaching them a history lesson, we also have to find a way how they analyze, critically think. And when you have these different terms, like how can they compare and contrast? How can they distinguish? How will they examine? How will they organize the information? And then at the end, we see that they have to be able to stand and evaluate what they are learning. So, supporting it, critique it, weigh it, appraise it, argue on it. And then at the end, are they being able to create an original work when they apply the information they learn? So Bloom's taxonomy has become a very defined way of identifying how you are going to teach and how are you going to proceed with your course. And one of the things that I always like to tell is that, I've had people ask me, why use Bloom's taxonomy? Don't make it more complicated. But again, at the same time, it's not. It's easy so that the student and the teachers alike understand these exchanges. It's very important for them to understand the purpose of that interchange, and also for the teacher to clarify these objectives for themselves and for the students. If you are not clear, it's very hard to teach. And at the end, I also wanted to say that you have to plan how you're going to deliver your instruction, how are you going to design the assessments, and how are you going to ensure that your instruction, the way you're teaching and the assessments are aligned with these objectives. So these are, certain ways of where we can apply how we are teaching. And it doesn't have to be a university, that you cannot teach it. You can. It's how you're teaching your material to your students. So we are also, as we go forward with Bloom's taxonomy, we have also realized that the focus on class discussions and the focus on making your classwork more active and more engaging is what we call the flipped classroom. where we give the students a lot of pre-class homework, pre-class readings, pre-class information, and the students are then using that to learn. So all of this will emphasize that, the students, you are making better use of your class time without, standing there and lecturing something from a textbook or from a book that the students have and they can read. Also, there is this difference between, which has become, very, very popular, which is what we call active learning. So active learning, rather than direct learning, which is lectures, etc., is where you emphasize discussions, you emphasize service learning, you emphasize games and simulations in the class, which is how the students learn. So one of the ways of active learning, which I have practiced, and if you all are interested, please let me know, we can have workshops on this, is what we call reacting to the past. This is a simulation on a historical event, and I'm going to show you a video right now where we created what reacting is, and I think that'll be the best way to do this. Reacting to the past seeks to introduce students to major philosophical ideas and texts. It uses role-playing to replicate the historical context in which these ideas acquired significance. Introduced by a group of faculty at Barnard College, Reacting to the Past has many games that reflect important historical and contemporary events on their list. The students are assigned different historical and also sometimes fictional character roles typical of the age and the social positions, and all derived from the historical settings. Each of these games or each roles were largely defined by the game's objectives and corresponds to the political position in the country or at the time during when the crisis took place.
It's more engaging. The way with this game has gone, it's very inviting, and as this game has progressed, it's become one of those interactive. It's almost like a video game in a sense. It's so interactive, it attracts to the mind process of you, and you retain the material a lot quicker.
The history department has played several games over the years. We've played the Rwanda game, the India Defining a Nation game, the French Revolution game, Red Clay, Yalta 1945, and many other micro games during our classes. So reacting to the past creates a very student-centered learning environment, and we know through studies that a student-centered learning environment allows students to learn the material more deeply because they have to engage with it on such a personal level.
So I had to immerse myself a little bit more into the history of the region. So it was history of Japan. So I had to immerse myself into what decisions they made going into the World War II, and prior to that, how it affected them afterwards. So it was a pretty immersive experience. I got to learn more about it and change my way of looking at that region of the world historically.
So in many cases, the students feel or look at the alternatives or the what-ifs in history, which also makes them very excited that they, through the process of the game, through their persuasion, through their arguments, and through their writing, they can change the way history happened.
The skills that students are learning and reacting to the past game cross interdisciplinary boundaries. They're asking really big questions in our classes, but they're also questions that would be asked in a political science or a criminal justice or a philosophy class. And so they can take the skills they learn in our classrooms and transfer them to other learning environments and into the real world.
So as you see that we went into a lot of effort creating this video for our students, because we felt it was really important for them to understand. And it as we mentioned in the video, that it touches on important historical events, and it is catering to this new student generation. It was developed by professors at Barnard College of Columbia University, and we have games for every part of history. And it is not just history. We have STEM games. We have a food chain game. We have a climate change game. We have games on human rights. Like I'm playing a game on the issues of Rwanda right now, on human rights and needs for intervention, on how the UN works. So it is very interactive, but at the same time, it also helps the student to read and do research and to develop these different writing skills and public speaking skills, and also critical thinking skills, which are very, very important. So if questions on reacting, please let me know. So the other aspect of this, and I'm going to go a little faster here with service learning. Service learning has become this very important aspect of connecting the students with the community. Our university has about what we call 45 community service hours that the students need to graduate. So when we teach students with different courses, we find that they need to know how to do service learning. And so we connect with a community partner, we develop projects, and we build those projects into the curriculum, and the students go out and work. So for my class, I teach a class on global refugees, and the students are connected with refugee families, and you can see the pictures here. And they go and they help the students with ESL, with different needs that the refugees might need to resettle in America. And overall, the students work about 2 to 3 hours a week, getting about 25 community service hours throughout the semester. So now with COVID, we have done a lot of e-service learning. So the students are actually meeting on Zoom to do tutoring and ESL. A very important part of service learning is to do reflections, because the students are going out into the community. They have questions, they have, they go through a process when they are working out in the community, because they discover themselves. And so in this process, we have what we call guided reflections. We have journals where the students write about their experiences, and they are ranting most of the time. They have discussion boards. We also organize wikis, which is like a blog where the students can write about their experiences. We have also organized service learning courses internationally, which is, I'm sure a lot of you have done that, like take your students out of your institution, out of your state, to go and work with some disadvantaged community. So in this case, we do study abroad trips to India regularly. And so when we come to India, we pick 1 or 2 villages that we go and work with. So in this instance, our students came to understand how an Indian village worked. And so we worked at a school, we organized a summer camp, and the students learned a lot to work in a different environment, to see rural India, because, we just did not go to touristy places. But it was also a very diverse and intercultural experience. And a lot of universities are emphasizing on this multicultural education that the students should get. So as we see this, post-COVID has changed. And so all of this will become really very, very important, like, personalized and virtual learning. Student attendance will fluctuate both online and on ground. There will also be a change in the student mobility. So a lot of students will not be traveling for education. A lot of students will see the benefits of being socially distanced and also e-learning. So a lot of universities have to cater to this. They have to change the way they deliver their education. They have to accommodate that. So learning with technology will become very important. And so open, distant learning, blended learning, change assessments, all of this will become part of the way the education has changed. And so as we go into higher education, we know that research, it will always become very, very important to the faculty. So here I would just like to talk a little bit about my research journey. And as I'm emphasizing my research journey, I see that my training was as a historian. I'm a student of Professor J.N. Fukan. I studied in Cotton College, so I had learned from the best of the faculty there. A shout out to Professor B.N. Talukdar, to Professor Udaydita Bharali, and also Dr. Lokhi Devi, who was one of our first, ancient India teachers. And the Guwahati University curriculum was really good because I feel I got such a comprehensive education that it allows me to teach whatever I want. Hence the emphasis on teaching China, Japan, Korea, Middle East, human rights, etc., etc. So my training was as a hardcore historian, and I'm very proud to say I am a student of Professor Fukan, who was very strict as a PhD, supervisor, and he would scratch out every page I wrote before he agreed to let me go through this, through the portals into the world. So, but I learned really hard. And my own PhD thesis was on colonial history of Assam. And so I worked on traditional archival research. I visited all the libraries and national archives in India before I could, get something out of this. So that 400-page, thesis, I have to revise it before it can be published, because then your focus is to get it done. But right after my PhD, I moved on to oral history and field work when I started working on Nepali migration. And that was one of the best discoveries of my life. I enjoyed working in the field. I enjoyed writing the history of a community. I enjoyed doing the interviews. And I'm really grateful for the Nepali community in Assam for, allowing me to go inside this community. And I didn't know much about field research at that time. I didn't know much about oral history. So I had to study that part of it. I had to study the methodology. I had to study everything. And then from there, I was still working with Nepali migration when I came to the US, and I was working with the Nepali diaspora here, where I came upon the Bhutanese refugees. And I remember when I was doing my Nepali migration research that, Kanakmani Dixit, who used to be the editor of Himal in Nepal, pointed me in the direction of the Bhutanese refugees. And since then, he's been an invaluable guide to my research on the Bhutanese refugees. And so I started working on the Bhutanese refugees, and the question of how, as a non-refugee, how do you do the research of a community for a community that has experienced so much trauma and so much suffering? So it took me a long time to get, and I'm still writing this up, it's taken me through this own journey of self-discovery, where I have had to work double. I had to make all these visits to the refugee camps, which was one of the most amazing times of my life. And as I moved there, I also had to go in to Bhutan, and I'm very proud to say that I am one of the only Bhutanese refugee researchers that is still allowed into Bhutan. So if you can see the amazing pictures that I have, this one on the right is with the home minister of, with the speaker of the Bhutanese National Assembly. And he was very, very, very sweet. And when I left, he said, go and be a good ambassador for Bhutan, which I also felt was like a warning. So, but I've had great experiences, and I feel like it has also helped me develop as a scholar. That to question my own methods of doing research, to question more and more of what I do. And I think that is what research is. It's how you place yourself in the environment, in your research environment, and just question. It's very easy to do research, but it's also very hard because it's a path of self-discovery. And I feel all of this led me to what is called active learning. It has informed my teaching. So research will, you will, like Biman mentioned, there's so many historical opportunities for history research. You can work in museums, you can do whatever, and I'll talk about the career opportunities in history now. And as we move forward, I feel like as a professor, as a faculty in higher education, research is kind of attached to you. It becomes this second life that you have, and you cannot avoid it. So choosing a topic, choosing an area of research that makes you really happy is the key to it. So don't choose a topic that you have to do because everybody is telling you to do. Choose something that allows you to explore, that allows you to, kind of find something new, and also to explore areas that you can contribute. So this is how you choose a research topic, how you go forward to it, and it's a learning process. So that's really how it is. Now, when we look at history as career, you know, one of the things that we have it on our website, what are the careers that a student in history can have? And although the myth is that history is boring, history has nothing to offer, history is, useless, all those things you will hear. But at the same time, as you have heard from my lecture, it's not so. So some of I'll just go through this really fast because we're getting close to time. History, if you notice, as communicators, you can be a writer, editor, journalist, documentarian, multimedia, producers of multimedia material, archivists, record managers, librarians. The opportunities are endless where you want to communicate your historical knowledge to the world. As teachers, that is a common choice of career that, oh yeah, I have learned history and I can go and be a teacher. So being a teacher is one of the common aspects of being a history, learning with a history degree, but you can also do it in a much broader way. You don't have to teach in a school. You don't have to teach in a post-secondary education alone. You can be, an English teacher, or you can travel to other countries. You can be historical sites and museums. They need people to tell them about the real history of a particular, artifact. Or you can be an administrator or military officer. So history as for teachers, that is a very good career option. Again, as a researcher. So these are different options that you have as a researcher, which we see, working in think tanks, working as data analysts, working in a museum, historical organization. So all of this is where you are you're paid to do research, so that is something which is priceless. When you are paid to do what you love to do, I think there is no second choice to this. cultural resource management, et cetera, et cetera. So you know what options are available. Also, as advocates, you can work as lawyers and paralegals, and especially in the U.S., we know that students who are taking the legal, the law school aptitude test, which is the LSAT, the history students are the ones that are faring the best. They are the ones that are getting the highest scores, and they are the ones that kind of combine their degree and their learning material with their professional experiences. So they have lawyers and paralegals, litigation support. You can be a politician or a legislative staff. You can work as in the NGOs, lobbies, civil servants. So if you notice that the myth that when you take study history, you will not get a high paying job. If you look at all the statistics that are out there, we see that the historians do have, good paying jobs. And finally, I also wanted to emphasize about business opportunities or in the businesses. One of the very, popular is about where do the history students find jobs in high paying corporate world. And we see that as business people, data managers, contract historians, a lot of companies are hiring historians to write the history of their corporations. And we know that here, the motorcycle company, Harvey, is hiring people. A lot of these companies, Google and all these other companies, have historians on their payroll because they want to hire people. Like, and one of a great example that I have are some of my students have gone on to work with big companies like Google and Rackspace because, and they're rising up higher than some of their peers because they can think, they can do the research, they can write, they can analyze the material, and those skills are very, very valuable in the corporate world. So as as I talk to you about this, remember that your options are open. Um, and also you can work for, as we talk about different agencies, working with the UN, working with, different United Nations programs. They like social scientists, they like historians because they feel they like people from the humanities because they feel these are the people that can think and they can write. So even if they're working in the digital world with digital technology, the skills that you learn in humanities are always going to be very, very beneficial. So I'm going to stop here and let Umi tell us about questions, if you all have any questions. So thank you very much. This was a great opportunity. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Dr. Nath, for the brilliant presentation. It truly opened up vistas about higher education in the US and especially the reading of history. We do have a few questions. Would you like to start with answering one at a time, or should I put all the questions together?
Start with one or two, and then I can see. And if you have any questions that are very common or similar, then maybe we can club the questions.
Yeah, ma'am, I have prepared some questions and clubbing a few of them from the participants. There's one. Are there any differences in pedagogic practices of history in India and the West, since you have taught in both in India and also in the States? So,
Okay. When you talk about pedagogy, I think it's a very heavily loaded term. It's your teaching methodology. So as we talk about teaching methodology, as I have stated in my presentation, that I have gone through several, and it's been a while since I left India, so I have not. I have kept in touch, but I don't know how much of teaching how much of the pedagogy has changed in India over these years. But as we know that, and I know that the assessment system has changed, the system has changed from annual to a semester system, which has made it more intensive and much more faster. But with the teaching pedagogy, as I've said, I have changed the way I teach history, honestly. I have adopted these different pedagogical methods like reacting to the past. That is a very distinctive pedagogical style of teaching where you are putting the students, putting the whole educational burden and responsibility of your classes on your students. And you are, as a teacher, you are guiding them. So in many ways, I don't know if a lot of Indian universities are doing that. But when I left Cotton College, all we did was lecture. I would go into a class and lecture, and we would ask questions, and the students would be, they didn't have that support system at that time. You didn't have technology. I would draw a map on the board and I would write an instruction, please do not erase this map, because I cannot draw the map of China every day, or I cannot draw the map of US every day. So I would cut it out and other faculty would tease me about it. But yeah, but now we don't have to worry about those things. We have the technology with us that we can, take it anywhere. But what I'm saying is that the actual teaching style is something which you innovate and you be creative. So there are professors who still lecture here that I have moved on to, because I like my classes to be more interactive and discussion based, and that's what I do.
Thank you, ma'am. There's another which says, do you think altering historical facts and rewriting history is doing more harm than good in today's political climate?
Again, a very heavy question. So what I feel is that I don't think if you can alter historical facts. You are saying two words, you're saying that they are facts, and then you're talking about altering. Facts are facts, and that is something which, as a historian, we are very, we are very fortunate to have those facts with us that we work with. And I know what's happening in India with the attempt to alter historical facts, and I do not agree with it. Of course, it is going to affect the political climate, and of course, it is a deliberate attempt to erase very valuable aspects of history, which is very important for us. You cannot go through a process. You cannot totally erase a period of history, or you cannot say that the Indus Valley civilization did not happen in Indus, but happened in the Saraswati River, because you don't want Pakistan to have ownership over the Indus Valley civilization. That is history. Borders are man-made. Those happened if you look at dates. And I think that is what I tell my students. When you're studying history, locate it at a time period, which something happened in 3,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago, happened 1,500 years ago. Things have changed, but that doesn't mean the history has changed. And you can see like how I might be screaming because I am so passionate about this. I do not like the fact that they are trying to take away the Mughal period of history, that they're changing the names of history. That is a part of Indian culture. That is a part of our Indian history. So I'm not apologizing for this statement. I hate it when they are changing the name of Mughal Sarai to whatever. I'm a firm believer that history happened for a reason. History tells us what it should, and we should use that historical knowledge to make our lives or to understand our past. Because if you do not understand your past, you cannot understand your present. The whole purpose of history is to understand the past, to learn from the past. So if we learn from the mistakes of our historians or our history, we can better our future, but we cannot change our past. So no alteration of history in my books. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds about good. Then there's another. In what ways can young students be encouraged to take up humanities as an academic discipline in a world where STEM subjects sound more promising and lucrative?
I think I already explained that in my presentation a little bit, that, you know, even though even the study of STEM is changing these days, you know, so I don't know how much of that is happening in India, but as we see in the national education policy, that's going to change. Like, you cannot just be a STEM student. You can be a biology student, biology major, and a history minor. You can be a, you know, physics major, and you can be an anthropology minor. And I think that is the beauty of this new education policy, that you're giving the students this opportunity. But yes, you know, that is our mindset. And I think the mindset is important because of the way that things are run. It is, you know, that the only way you can make a life for you if you are a doctor or an engineer. And I have my own life to say that. You know, when I graduated from high school, my father was like, okay, go to study medical or go to, you know, join the sciences. And I was like, no, I'm going to go into the arts. And I still remember that when I was standing for major with my bachelor's, I was standing in line to be an English major because that's what everybody wanted me to do. And Professor Bharali just like pulled me out of that line and took me to the history section. He said, come and do history. And I am so grateful to him for that, that today I feel my life is without any regrets. So I think it's, you know, based on, yes, whether you want to make your life a living hell by working, you know, nonstop, or you want to have a great life. And I think you choose what makes you happy. So money will always come. And that's what I always say, that if you are excellent in what you do, whether you're a doctor, an engineer, or whether you are a historian, I think you stand a chance of living a comfortable life. So it doesn't have to be that what career is lucrative. Have you not seen the statistics of the number of engineers in India that do not have jobs? Okay, so you don't want to be an engineer on the streets in India, or a doctor working in a little dispensary somewhere and not making enough money. You know, those are just myths. So please do not go with that. Things are changing.
There's another question. I think we can club with this one as well. How the national education policy of 2020 will help the Indian education system in near future? I mean, the applicability of the national education policy.
I think the national education policy is very well written in many ways, where I see that it's trying to pull India out of the you know, the archaic system that they had fallen into with the education system. You know, we know that India is a technology giant, India is a science giant, you know, India produces the best scientists and the best software professionals. And even like the education system was very good. You know, like I'm a product of the Indian education system and I don't regret it. You know, I have the best all-rounded education that I ever had. But what I'm also feeling is that what India lacks is exposure. What India lacks is globalization. What India lacks is internationalization of the education system. So, you know, so I think like foreign students come to the US to study, India should be a hub for international students. there's so much to learn. And I think the national education policy will better the Indian education system by exposing our student population, by exposing our faculty to those opportunities which should be had for India. And I think, like a college like yours has so much facilities, such brilliant faculty. And I think they will benefit so much if you have exposure, or if you are able to expose your students to a international education system. And I think that is the strength of this national education policy.
Thank you, ma'am. There's another which asks, can you suggest few tips for applying for scholarships in the States?
So I know that is a very important question for anybody who wants to go out because of the horrible exchange rate we have in India. That Indian money counts for nothing and you will be spending so much. So as I mentioned, that some universities will obviously offer scholarships, and you have to look into what scholarships the universities are offering. So there is no, and there are some scholarships that are, specially tailored for international students. So those are scholarships that you apply. And I always tell the students, like, once you get into a university, if you are very proactive, you are, you know, a good student, you are trying to get ahead, you can do it, because every foreign student is allowed to work for 20 hours a week. And then in addition to that, on your F1 visa, you're allowed to work for 20 hours a week on campus. And in addition to that, you can go in and look for scholarships that are available. So there are so many ways. There are so many, opportunities for scholarships. Like there is that fastweb.com that gives out grants and scholarships. You can apply. So, but the trick is to try and talk to the universities. And a lot of universities, like in the US, they are going in what is called for diversity. So they want diversity. They want a diversification of their student population. So they want foreign students. And so that is something that you can tap into. And also, Indian government will give you scholarships sometimes. There are opportunities.
I would like to add another question to it: how to apply for teaching, positions in the States? Because do we need like primary experience? Because since you have moved from here to the States with teaching experience at you, so
I think I'm an anomaly. I'm not the rule. So let me tell you this, that I got really lucky. And I think the general rule is that you come, you do your PhD here, and then you apply for a teaching job. But I got very lucky, and with my training, and because I got through the Fulbright, and I came to this private university here. So, everything kind of worked out for me, and that's how I am here. But, I think you can apply. The one thing about US universities, especially for teaching jobs, every American university is an equal opportunity employer. So the only barrier we have is to come in for interviews. But now with Zoom and all these facilities, that doesn't seem to be a barrier anymore. Even when we are hiring here at our university, we do a few, rounds for through Zoom. So, and the university, since they're equal opportunity, if they think you are the best candidate, they will hire you. They don't care where you are from. You can be from anywhere in the world and they hire. Like our university hires people from all over the world all the time. So it's how you are applying. And I think that the trick is in the application process, how you are putting together your letter, how you're putting together your resume, how you are focusing on the letters of recommendation that you get. I know that a lot of people write very short letters of recommendation from India, and the trick is to emphasize your research and to get good people to write your letters of recommendation. So yes, we all have the experiences, but how we are showing our experiences. And let me tell you one thing is that in India, uh, people in India are very modest. They don't want to talk about themselves. They don't want to talk about how great they are. And I think that is where we get cut. So if you know how to, you have to speak yourself, talk about yourself, talk yourself up. And that is what Americans do. And I'm not like labeling Americans, but you cannot beat them in talking about themselves. So when I first started working here, my dean would always tell me, Lopita, talk about yourself. And I'm like, sir, it's there. Like, no, you have to talk about yourself. Otherwise, how will people know what you do and what you know? So I think preparing yourself for the interview, preparing yourself on how to do your research presentation. All those things play a very important role in how you project yourself as the best candidate. So there is a competition, but American universities are equal opportunity employers. So they will hire you if you're the best candidate.
Thank you, ma'am. Since we are running out of time, we have one last question. What are your views on the prospects of liberal arts in Indian universities?
When we talk about, give me 1 second, okay? I have a meeting coming up, so I'm just going to send a message to the student. So when we talk about liberal universities, it is, liberal arts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So I'm just trying to collect my thoughts on that. So liberal arts is what, the study of humanities, the study of philosophy, the study of literature, social sciences, arts, fine arts, everything. And I think that is a strength. That is a strength. Like when you think about it, I don't know how you would label Guwahati University. They do have their science streams, but Guwahati University is also a liberal arts university. So in many ways, so you can see that they have their strengths. And I feel, a liberal arts university has more scope and opportunities than just being just a STEM university, just a science university, or just a technology. Even the IIT Guwahati has their social science stream there. So you can see that even in a technology university, you have those opportunities.
I think with that is the end of it. Because ma'am, we're running short of time, and you also have a meeting after this.
Yes, I have a meeting actually.
Yes, I won't be prolonging much more. I think Biman Hazarika sir would not be able to offer you vote of thanks, but I would like to offer my vote of thanks on behalf of the Dhing College fraternity for this brilliant and engaging presentation. It threw light on various aspects, right from higher education to history and career opportunities. And I also like to thank Dr. Biman Hazarika, our respected principal, sir, for being so patient and for taking up a topic of relevance. And my heartfelt gratitude to the Research Forum and IQAC Dhing College. And lastly, the participants for being so patient and putting up very thought-provoking questions. They message me personally, actually, like with all their queries. And thank you for your patience and encouragement. Ma'am, I think with this, I can conclude the session, I guess, right?
Okay. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate this. And I think it was really very energizing for me, and also a good way to learn what faculty in India are thinking at this point. So if they have any questions, please share my email. If they have more questions, then they can get in touch with me.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you, Biman, for being so patient.
Yeah, okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Participants are requested to submit the feedback form, and your e-certificates will be shared in a day or two. So please, everyone's requested to be patient and till you hear from us again. Thank you. Thank you all.